you didn't tell too many people. You know, if you said, "Oh, I'm going to see my psychiatrist," say, "What are you, weak?" Don't tell me. I talked to my wife. I don't need to talk to no psychiatrist. Well, is she available? Can I talk to her?
Yeah, seriously, send her over.
Yeah, fuck.
It's episode 209 of the Cassius Morris Show. Thanks for tuning in to this brand new edition of the podcast. As you can see, I made a few changes here in the studio environment. I'm in a brand new setting here. Personally, really happy with it, and I appreciate all of the feedback I've been getting on social media. The interview you're about to see still has the classic background, so this is going to be pretty much the final farewell to that. And moving forward, all of these segments will have caught up to the current background. Today's guest on the podcast is none other than Brian Wheat, bassist for iconic rock and roll band Tesla. Tesla is a multi-platinum selling band that got their start in Sacramento, California. They quickly gained stardom through the 80s and 90s, touring in almost any country you could imagine with some of their most respected peers. Brian Wheat is far more than just the bassist in a band. He's a man who's been through many trials and tribulations, including being diagnosed with colitis, battling with bulimia, depression, and anxiety. Now, this was all happening while he was on the road with Tesla and making such amazing records, and probably what you wouldn't expect when you're thinking of the rock star lifestyle. But this is exactly why I want to use my platform to talk about these themes with these people. It's very important to know that the people that we all look up to experience these same things too. If you look up to someone and they've helped you through a situation, be it with depression, anxiety, health, or anything else, one of the biggest things to feeling okay when dealing with any of these issues is knowing that you're not alone. And these heroes, these people that come onto my show have helped so many people get through their own personal issues. So I want to highlight the fact that these people have been through issues too, and the reason I want to do that is because they have seen the brighter side of it. They've made incredible lives and careers for themselves, and incredible lives for their families, and touched so many people with the music and film and creative output that they have released. So the reason that I'm doing this entirely is not just to tell you when someone's new album is coming out or when the new single is going to drop. It's to really humanize people and bring out the inner layer of them to show that nobody's really alone. We have all these commonalities that we share, and whether you're an actor, whether you're a rock star, we all share the same base level emotions, and no struggle is so unique that no one else has ever faced it. If you like the conversation you're about to see, please hit that subscribe button on YouTube. I'm trying to build those numbers up. And also hit the Cassius Morris Clips YouTube channel. That's my second page. I put all the clips up from these episodes so you can go through them. And I can start monetizing that channel at 1,000 subscribers. As of the time I'm recording this, I'm just about at 800. So please go to Cassius Morris Clips. There's a link in the description whether you're watching or listening to this, and hit that subscribe button so I can start making some money. I'm not asking for donations. I'm not asking for a Patreon. Just hit that subscribe button, and that's the best thing you can do to support me. And without further ado, let's get into my exclusive podcast with Brian Wheat of Tesla. I mean, crazy times. But I know you've been really busy with the book, and what a book it is.
Oh, thanks, buddy. Have you read it?
Yeah, definitely. I've been getting into the PDF copy. One thing I really notice is that I find it very true to your nature because the book is just straight to the point. Was it very important to you for it to be like that, just straight to the point and straight to the root of what happened in your eyes?
Yeah, it was really important for me to have it in my voice, like I was talking to you like I am now.
Right. I mean, it's an important thing because, you know, I feel like a lot of the books of this sort, it's sort of aimed at mudslinging and throwing people under the bus, whereas yours seems like a very objective perspective. In terms of the collaborating on the book, I know you had a co-writer. How much of it was him bringing up memories and ideas, and how much of it was sort of your own recollection? Were you sort of just telling him what to write?
Yeah, I mean, basically, I started the book 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started it, I started with this guy, Pete Mikowski in England, who used to write for Sounds magazine. And, you know, it was kind of like, let's just go through my life chronologically.
Right.
and I'll just ramble about, everything I can remember. And that's how the book started. But that first draft didn't make it to be the book. It sounded like I was English, and it wasn't kind of in my voice.
Right.
It was more in his voice. So I sounded like I was an English guy when you read it, some of the phrases and stuff. And then after that, I started with this guy, Kenny Nicholson. He used to work with Tesla for a long time, still does every now and again, does all kinds of things from our videos to production manager to stage manager to guitar tech to monitor guy to, just
everything.
Everything. He's known me since I was 18 years old. So he kind of sat me down and then interviewed me kind of chronologically, and more on the Tesla side, the stuff about Tesla. And so we finished that, and we thought that was the book. And then when we sent it around, people said it read too much like an interview. And then that's when I got together with Chris Epting, and we started to talk more about my personal issues that I have to deal with as far as health and anxiety and depression and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so it was a long process.
Right. No, that's interesting. So I guess my first question would be, did you expect it to be such a sort of big ordeal to write a book? Did you expect it to sort of be done in a year or two?
I didn't know what to expect because I'd never done one before. You know what I mean?
Fair enough.
I just sat down and started working it. And there were gaps because obviously I do a lot of touring.
Yeah.
So there were big gaps. And I think it was once we got a release date, once we sit and when we got our first real draft together that me and Chris got together and then sent it off to the publisher. And they went, yeah, we'd like to do this. And then we had a release date, and then we kind of had to work towards that release date to have everything, all in order.
Right. So that sort of gave you like a foundation of how you were going to move forward and probably made it quite a bit easier.
Yeah, well, put a fire up under my ass to finish it. Or at least what I thought was finish it, you know what I mean? Because you never really finish a record or a book. You just turn them in.
You never really feel
like
it's completely finished. There's always maybe something you could go back and do.
Yeah, there's stories maybe I forgot or I left out or stuff's happened since then.
Right.
Everyone, was kind of under the misassumption that I wrote it just during COVID. And that's not true at all. That book was 8 years in the making. Like I said, I started it, then I started it 3 different times.
Right.
So I think once me and Chris got together, it took about a year.
Okay.
And that was with me touring and stuff. So, if I was doing nothing and he was doing nothing, we probably could have had it done in 3 months.
Right. Did you ever write little bits and pieces while you were on tour, or did you just completely save it for at home?
I never wrote or touched a typewriter or a laptop or anything. It was all up here. And then I just spit it out to Chris and he wrote.
You'd give it to him.
That's what he did.
So when he first brought it up to you to start opening up about your personal issues and that side of it, was that hard for you to get into that? And did it take any convincing at all? Or were you just gung-ho, let's do it?
No, it was a little, at first I was a little bit like, oh, I don't know. If someone wants to hear about some of this shit, it's pretty unglamorous, isn't it? I get pretty deep. I talk about, depression, anxiety, bulimia, colitis, being overweight, all kinds of issues that I've dealt with personally. So once I made a conscious decision, and basically for me, the decision was, okay, if I put this stuff out there, if it can help some people by bringing awareness to it and saying, hey, look, then I'll do it. I'll talk about it because, some of it's, it's not very glamorous. You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
not like, you know, hey, look at me, I'm a rock star. It's like, hey, look at me, you know, I shit blood because I have colitis, and you
Right.
know, it's you know, it's
It's
you
not
know,
what you'd see on the fabulous
and
life
the
of the
only
rich and
people that can
famous.
understand that are other people who are going through it, and believe me, there's lots of them. So that's why I did that. I did it for
Yeah.
them, and once I did, it was actually kind of liberating for me.
Hmm.
You know, kind of cathartic. You know, in the sense that,
Yeah. No,
you
that
know,
makes a lot of
I
sense.
felt like I'd let it go, and you know, I don't internalize it anymore.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's sort of a way of releasing it. I mean, I've even heard that it's good in some senses to write a letter and rip it up or what have you.
Well,
In
that's
this sense,
kind
you're
of
giving
how
it
it
out.
started. The whole idea of writing a book
Right.
was my psychiatrist back in 1990, 91. Well, I had him through the mid 90s, but he said, you know, you should write a book and it'll help you release it. And with the idea of, you know, you would rip it up and throw it away or whatever, give it to your grandson or whatever. And I kind of blew it off. But then later in life is when I actually decided, well, yeah, I'm going to write a book and maybe someone will be interested in it, because enough time had passed. You know, I was just approaching 50 at that point in time. And, you know, Tesla had been a band for 25 years, 30 years or whatever it's been when I was 50. That someone I thought actually might give a fuck and want to read a book, you know, from me. When he said it to me in 1990, no one would have cared.
You
Know,
didn't feel it like it was right.
Well, yeah, and I didn't think there'd be a demand for a book from a guy who'd only put out 2 albums. Be
Mm.
kind of pretty assumptuous, if you will. You
You
know,
wanted to wait.
well, I didn't want to wait. I never really thought about it back then. When he said it, I just thought, well, there's no, you know, you know, why put out a book? I'm not Axl Rose, you know, at the time. I mean, I was a bass player in a band that was trying to become a big band. So when I sat down and wrote this book, Tesla had become a big band and had this lineage of a career that was, you know, 25 years plus. At that
Right.
point, it's of some interest, I thought, to some people.
A ton of interest to a lot of people, I'll tell you. And I mean, it's so much fascinating stuff. So, one thing I'd love to hear you open up about is sort of the misunderstanding of what depression really is when you're going through it at the time, and how you came to find it out. I know Chris Cornell, there was a moment that really opened your eyes to what depression really was with him.
Well, I only met Chris one time.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found kind of, you know, fascinating was that he opened up to me about having really bad anxiety attacks, which I have had and have every now and again. And I never heard anyone else in a band ever talk about having anxiety attacks.
Right.
And then we started talking about the medications that we'd taken and how we try to deal with it and stuff. But I think the misconception with depression is that people think you're crazy.
Right.
Or anxiety. You know, they say, oh, it's all in your head. You know, you're fucking, you know, don't be a pussy. Don't be weak. You're mentally weak. And it's not. It has nothing to do with being mentally weak whatsoever.
No.
Or being a pussy. It's something you don't have a whole lot of control over. And I don't know, you know, it's an imbalance in your brain or whatever it is, you know, whether it's bipolar depression or anxiety, you know, it's not your fault.
No.
You know, and it doesn't mean you're a weak person.
Yeah.
And that is the misconception that people have. You know, if you break your leg, they don't say you're weak because you got a broken fucking leg.
Right.
Well,
or if you have a cast on.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's you know, it's fucked up that way.
Right.
And that's
it really
what I
is.
wanted to say with the book was maybe some fan in Canada or wherever, someone like you know, like, hey, wow, you know, that maybe has the same thing or goes through the same things that I do with, you know, depression, anxiety, colitis, bulimia, any of those things that I've had to deal with in my lifetime. Like, hey, I'm just like you, man. You know, you're not alone. There's
Seriously.
other people, even famous people, if you will, if you want to call me famous.
100%.
I don't call myself famous, but if someone else wants to, okay, let them. You know, then they can relate, and then that helps them. So that was the whole point of the book.
Yeah, it's so important.
That part of the book.
Yeah, you know, and it takes so much to do.
Was an illegitimate child. And was, you know, scrutinized for being, you know, or poor. There's so many things, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, the one thing I want to get out there and make quite clear to everybody is I'm not asking for anybody's sympathy. I've done fucking fine.
Yeah.
I did it on my own, right? And my brother's in Tesla. And I'm fine, and I'm not asking you to feel sorry for me. Please don't. I don't feel sorry for myself. I get up every day and kick ass. And that's another moral of the story is, just get up and kick ass. If you got these things, don't let no one tell you that you're not good enough. You know, you want to piss me off, just tell me no. Right? Someone tell me, no, you can't do that, and I'll prove you wrong.
Get in my way, and you'll see me get mad.
What's that?
Get in my way, and you'll see the other side. You know.
Well, that's what, you know, works for me. You know, even when I talk about 5-man acoustic jam and about how our manager, Peter Mensch, challenged us, you know, that's the moxie of Tesla is, you know, don't challenge us. You know, that comes from me and Frank Hannon. You know, we both have very, very similar backgrounds. You know, didn't grow up without fathers. We grew up without fathers. We're poor. Jeff Keith's the same way. You know, we all have this similar bond. The four of us, me, Jeff, Frank, and Troy. And I think that's why we're still together 37 years later, you know, and still do what we do, is that we have this common thing where people always told us we weren't good enough. You know,
and you guys thrive on that.
We didn't meet that level, the criteria of, you know, what the textbook says you should be.
And you guys all felt that together.
I don't know that we all felt that together. It's just my observation. But when I look at us and the common thread between the four of us and the fact that we're in a band is that we all grew up without really fathers, and we all grew up poor. Yeah. So that's a pretty common thing with the four of us, you know what I mean? So I think, you know, it drove us, it gave us drive. Plus the fact that we wanted to do it, we wanted to all make it. But I mean, that was always underneath it all. It was all there, I think. And you get into the psyche of it all.
Right.
You know, we weren't lazy guys.
No.
You know, we were very driven.
Yeah, by no stretch. I've never heard you guys described as lazy, and it would never be warranted. And, you know, it makes me wonder. I mean, the reason Tesla is one of my favorite groups out of you guys' era is because you guys had music that was adaptable. You know, you could hear it on the radio, you could hear it in a club, whatever, and everybody could enjoy it. But it had that soul, it had that grit, and you know, it was unmistakable. Do you feel like that combination of you guys' upbringings and those challenges contributed to that grit on top of everything you guys went through while you were a band? Because there was so much that happened.
I think it had to have. You know, I mean, it had to have. It had to have. I mean, we all know what it's like. So
yeah.
You know, I'm the one that got, you know, a lot of the weird health issues in the band. So, but we all know what it's like.
What's it like for you to have issues that have stigma around them? And how long, for people who don't know, how long did it take you to fight those stigmas, such as seeing a psychiatrist and opening up about health issues that aren't, you know, glamorous?
Well, how long did it take me? Or
I
What's the
guess at what
question
stage
again?
at what stage in your life did you really start to accept that, for the people who don't know?
I think it was when I first started seeing a psychiatrist,
Mm-hmm.
because at that point I felt helpless. I had nothing. I didn't know what to do.
Right.
I really didn't know what to do. And that was in 1991.
Okay.
Everything was great until then, as far as mentally, my depression. I mean, I had anxiety attacks, but then they got really severe in 1990. And that was, when you look at it, there was all this stress and pressure of the band. You know what I mean? We were trying to be the next big thing, and we had a couple successful records. And, at that point, I should have been like fucking happier than a lark. And I was happy. I thought I was. Then out of the blue, there's a wham, like a fucking bat to the baseball knee. I mean, baseball bat to your knees. These anxiety attacks that made me feel like I literally was on the roof looking down at myself, almost like hallucinating and outer body, no connection with your physical body. It was really trippy. It's called depersonalization, derealization is the actual medical term for it. And that's what I was going through around the making of Psychotic Supper,
Right.
So it was like, whoa, this is heavy.
Where you sort of look in the mirror and you don't feel like it's you.
That's exactly what it was. That's exactly what I would do. I'd look in the mirror and it didn't feel like it was me. Jesus, how do I make these things stop popping up on the screen?
It's okay.
That's it. That's exactly. I'd look in the mirror and I was like, that's not me. Whoa, it was trippy. And
yeah.
I suffered a lot more from anxiety first. Depression came later, like a couple of years ago, that I got hit with this really overwhelming state of depression. But there's a fine line between anxiety and depression.
Yeah. It's not the same thing.
It can be similar.
Yes, that's true too.
So it's like I say, it's a fine line. You don't know if, but when you hit the anxiety thing and you hit that fight or flight and, you're spinning around, that's not depression. I know that, but that lull and that, not wanting to get out of your bed and being afraid to get out of your bed, what is it? Depression? Is what's it called? Acrophobia?
I think agoraphobia, something like that.
It's all intertwined, the whole thing. It's the psyche of all that shit. You know what I mean? And, a psychiatrist can certainly answer it better than I can. I just did a lot of psychiatry with a great doctor. And the time that I saw him, I never did medication. Since then, I've been on medication, because he really made you do the work and get into your psyche and all that stuff. So it was the best money I ever spent was on Dr. Hirschkopf.
It sounds like he really made a huge impact in your life. I mean, were you comfortable telling people that you were seeing him when you first started?
No, because there was a stigma. People thought you were fucking broke. Thought you were broken. Thought you were, there's something wrong with you. You put him in the loony bin like Jack Nicholson in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest or something.
Right.
That was the perception. So you didn't tell too many people. If you said, "Oh, I'm going to see my psychiatrist," say, "What, are you weak?"
Right.
I had people tell me, "I talked to my wife. I don't need to talk to no psychiatrist." Well, is she available? Can I talk to her?
Yeah, seriously, send her over.
Yeah, fuck. So it was that kind of thing, It's a lot more accepted today, but it's still a stigma around it.
Yes, absolutely. That's the thing that fascinates me is that, there's such a stigma now. I can't even imagine at the time. Which is even further why I tip my hat to you raising awareness to this from your perspective. Another thing that's interesting about you is that you seem to sort of resent or dislike the term hair metal in a certain sense when applied to you guys.
Well,
Can you describe that?
I find it condescending. What does fucking hair have to do with the music? should we be called, cock metal because we all have big dicks? You know what I mean? Seriously, I mean, it's like hair metal. What does that have to do with anything? It's condescending. It's a put down. It's almost like saying, well, the music's not valid. They just had good hair. That's what it's like.
It's like a dismissal.
And to me, that I don't like that term, because I don't care. You can take the greatest hair metal band, whoever it is, or whoever, I don't even know who's hair metal. Would Motley Crue be considered hair metal? I guess they would, right? Except they're calling Tesla. Home Sweet Home was a great song. What did the fucking hair have to do with that song?
Nothing.
Or, Dr. Feelgood was a great song. So it's condescending. It's a put down. Should we call alternative music? Should we say about Nirvana, uncleanly music because they look like they didn't bathe?
It's a good point.
You know what I mean? So, I don't like it. Yeah. I think just talk about the music, because that's what matters. Not about the hair. Yes, we had a nice hit. I still do. Look, it needs to be dyed and stuff, but it's just condescending. It's really, you want to call it anything, call it 80s metal.
Yeah.
Call it 1980s rock, because that's what it was. It was rock that came out of the 80s and 90s, early 90s or whatever. I mean, the Black Crowes came out a year later than Tesla, and they're not called a hair metal band, right? Do they call Guns a hair metal band? Do they call Guns N' Roses a hair metal band?
I think where I'm at, yeah.
Okay. Poison,
anybody in that sort of era.
Right. Def Leppard, anybody. Metallica?
No.
Okay. Well,
which is interesting.
They came out around they came around at the same time.
They had massive hair.
I mean, why call us a hair metal band when all we were doing was imitating Aerosmith?
That's how you felt you guys were doing it at the time?
Yeah, I think we're very parallel to an Aerosmith. I think personally, if you can't go see Aerosmith and you want to see a good version of Aerosmith, go see Tesla. They're very similar.
Hey, amazing bass, amazing drums is a good point.
I mean, Jeff Keith looks like Steven Tyler. He sings like Steven Tyler, so. And actually, that's a tour I would always love to do is Aerosmith Tesla. We've never done that. I would love to do it. So, Steven, if you're listening, Joe.
They're frequent listeners. No.
We'd love to tour with you, your buddies.
I would love to see that tour.
Yeah, it'd be great, right?
Oh, my gosh.
So, that's the thing, I don't like the term hair metal. I think it's condescending and kind of a slight, and it has nothing to do with the music.
Yeah, I actually agree, and I would definitely not characterize you guys as that sort of metal, and it sort of does feel like a dismissal, because it's like, oh, we're not even going to bother delving into this group of music. We're just going to talk about hair. So I couldn't agree with you more.
We're a band that did the 5-man acoustic album.
Right.
So, it's contradictory as well. The most organic, stripped down, raunchy, underproduced live record that any rock band from that time made, right? Is
revolutionary.
As you can fucking get, but then we're a hair metal band. I don't like that term. They should do away with it.
The Beatles' Revolver. That's actually happens to be my favorite Beatles record. Talk to me about the importance of that record in your life.
Well, let's just say it's the greatest record ever made first.
Yes,
period,
I love that.
Anybody. By anybody, right?
You feel that way?
Oh, I do. Yeah, I do. I feel that that's the greatest record of all time. It's not Sgt. Pepper. It's Revolver. I feel on the 8th day, God created the Beatles and Paul McCartney. So, you know, when I was a kid, I had 5 older brothers and I was the youngest. And I would hear all this music coming out of their rooms when I was, you know, 4 or 5 years old. And I snuck into my brother Michael's room and grabbed one of his records, which just happened to be Revolver. And at the time, I had one of those little kiddie record players, and you know, you had those little kiddie songs, you know, those little 45s for little kids.
Oh, the little records, right?
Yeah. So I tried playing this record, which was Revolver, and Taxman, which was the first song, had a scratch. So I went to the second song, which was Eleanor Rigby,
mm-hmm.
and I heard that, and it just. It blew, you know, at 5 years old or 4 years old, whatever it was, I'd never heard anything like that. Right. Just these haunting vocals and this sound. And at that point, I became a Beatle fanatic
mm-hmm.
and a Paul McCartney fanatic because it was his voice, you know, his voice spoke to me, you know, right. I mean, if people say, well, who do you like, John or Paul? I love them all, but to me, it's Paul, right? Something about Paul, you know, the versatility, you know, because he wasn't just a rocker. He could do beautiful. I mean, the most soothing song ever is probably Let It Be, you know, as far as comforting, you know, and, you know, that, or, you know, Imagine, you probably have a strong argument, one of those 2 songs, but
Here Comes the Sun.
It's always been McCartney. So that was the impact of Revolver. And, you know, now, you know, I mean, I've studied that record so much as a musician myself. And, you know, I became friends with Jeff Emmerich, who was the engineer on that record.
Oh, wow.
Before he died, me and Jeff, you know, got together a few times. And it was just one of those magic things, you know, gift from God, you know, to make this record through the Beatles, you know, and I firmly believe that, and you're not going to change my mind.
No, I don't want to. I mean, that was the first Beatles record I really connected with. Talk to me about when you connected with Paul McCartney in person. I mean, jumping from listening to that record, Eleanor Rigby, to being with him.
I was in London. We all were in London. We were playing the Marquee Club. We were there right after the first, you know, album came out. And me and Frank were over at Geffen doing press. And we'd finished doing press that day. And we were walking through Soho Park, which is where Paul McCartney's office was. And we were going to go look at guitars because Frank loves to look in guitars and buy guitars and stuff. And there was his building, which I'd seen in magazines. I went, oh shit, there's Frank, that's Paul McCartney's building, you know, MPL.
Mm-hmm.
And just about that time, I looked up on the third, there's like 6 stories, because it's tall and skinny.
Right.
And he was on the 3rd floor, man, just looking out over the park. So I waved to him and he waved back. And I said, hey, come down, man. You know, 10 minutes, you know, 10 minutes. So Frank said, Frank, I'm going to stay here. He's going to come down. Frank said, well, I'm going to look at guitars. I said, okay, you go ahead, man. And I stayed and he came down and I talked to him, and, you know, got a couple pictures taken with him because by that time, other people had kind of sussed out he was around.
Right.
So that, you know, when I first got there was nobody else. But by the time he came down, it's funny. It was like a little flock of rats.
They just kept coming.
They just kept coming. And so I remember this one little redheaded girl. She was kind enough to take my camera and take some pictures. And I put a picture in the book of that meeting. He was great. You know, I told him I was, you know, had a band, and he didn't know who the band was or anything, and told him I was in town and we were going to play the marquee club. And he said, that's great. You know, a lot of people get started there. Good luck, man. And that was it. Then I met him again. And he was great. And, you know, it was just me and him and my wife and our friend who worked for him. She was his wardrobe person. She took care of his dressing rooms and his clothes. And it was in Sacramento, my hometown. And we went to the McCartney show and we're hanging out backstage with Allie, just hanging out because we weren't expecting to meet him or nothing. And he happened to walk in the wardrobe room and said, oh, hi, Allie, who's your friends? And she said, this is Brian and Monique. And he went, hi, I'm Paul. We went, oh, yeah, we know who you are.
Yeah, you don't say.
And I had a real long conversation with him then, but he still didn't know who the band was. When I told him, he went, oh, cool. He said, are you the singer? I said, no, I'm the bass player, like you. He went, oh, I said, I play a Hofner too, like you. He went, oh, great.
So he was sort of cordial.
I knew his drummer, Denny Sewell, who played on Live and Let Die and Man, I'm My Love and Uncle Albert and all that. And then he was, you know, so we had a nice chat. He was super charming.
That's
just
awesome.
A really nice man, you know, really. I mean, he could have just threw us out of the fucking room if he wanted to.
Could do whatever. He's Paul McCartney.
You know, nobody around him. No, you know, I mean, there was his guys, but and I'm sure they were his security guys, but they just normal guys like me and you. You know, they're probably packing Uzis and stuff, you know, mess with Paul to take care of you.
Semi-presidential security.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, man.
That's incredible.
And, you know, it's great when you meet one of your hero, my ultimate hero, and you're not let down, and then he was super nice. Yeah. That makes you feel really good. Makes me want to be better to my fans, you know?
Right.
Because, you know, sometimes I've been accused of being short or non-approachable. And part of it is I'm extremely shy. I don't like meeting new people. And, hey, Spanky, come here, buddy. And part of it is you know, if I'm not feeling well, like I'm suffering with colitis on the road or stuff, which that's during the 2000s, it was, you know, for a period there, it was pretty constant. I'm just trying to get to my bunk and go lay down.
Yeah.
You know, after a show, I don't, you know, it's all I can do is to play the show. But it makes me go, well, try and take a minute to at least say hello and sign something. But when you got 50 people and it's cold outside and stuff, you know, I can just run right through them. And that kind of made me look at that differently and go, well, try to do it. Because like Jeff, he'll sit out there till the last stand's gone. It's like, Jeff, you're going to catch a cold and lose your voice. I don't care.
He's just out there signing and taking pictures.
Yeah. And you know, we all do that. But because I'm not very comfortable meeting new people, I'm kind of, it's really awkward for me. And I don't take praise very well. I remember my first wife, the first time I met Sandy, was in a studio and I met her and I was, you know, shy. This girl introduced me to her. And first thing she said was how she loved our first record. And I went, oh, thanks. And she took it as being stuck up. Mm-hmm. But I was like, it was uncomfortable, you know.
You didn't know how to accept it.
Yeah. But I'm getting better with that these days. You know, I have in my older age, you know, you get more vulnerable, if you will.
More open and maybe more used to things also.
Yeah. I still don't get used to it, but you just learn to accept them and stuff. No one means nobody any harm, you know. It's just, you know, I'm kind of socially awkward at times.
Hey, that's okay.
People. I'm fine in this situation because I'm so used to it.
Yeah, you're great now.
It's like, well, we're doing an interview. You know what I mean?
So that's easier for you.
If I met you on the street, or I went to, you know, my friend's house to play pool, and you were one of his friends, or just an acquaintance, and he brought you over and he started saying, "Oh, how much you love Tesla and stuff," it freaked me out.
Right.
Because I would rather talk to you about the weather or football or the Beatles or anything besides me. If
Right.
that makes sense.
Especially if you're not prepared for it.
Yeah. Yeah. It actually happened to me the other night I live in a small town in Texas, and I live in a small town. I live in a real small town in Texas, but that's where I'm at now. But in New York, it's about 35,000 people. It's right up there by Syracuse. But I'm in Texas, so I went to this little pool clubhouse thing. And, I went to see my brother, and this dude came up that was a big Tesla fan, I guess, or, and it caught me off guard. I wasn't ready for it.
Yeah, I mean, you never know where it's going to happen, right?
No. So, but I was fine after a minute. But I certainly started diverting the conversation to, hey, who's going to win the Super Bowl, or something like that. You know what I mean?
Right. That's really interesting, Brian. To wrap it up, I just wanted to do a speed round with you that we sort of do with each guest. And I think I know the answer to this first question, but artist you wish you saw live in the prime of their career?
Well, the obvious answer is going to be the Beatles, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's not really my answer. It would be Queen. I never
Queen.
got to see Queen with Freddie Mercury.
That's a good answer.
So, yeah, it would be Queen.
Let's say you could switch abilities with any entertainer, athlete for one day to see what it was like. Who would it be and why?
You know that answer.
Paul
McCartney.
Hey, great answers. I mean, there's no shame in a great answer. I got Mr. Lennon right here. One moment that you yourself felt starstruck.
I met Paul McCartney and was starstruck.
Fair enough. Deliver one message to your younger self.
Patience, grasshopper.
Patience, grasshopper. And final question, what do you think is the biggest key or one of the main keys to finding yourself as a musical artist?
What's that question again?
What do you think is one of the main pieces to finding yourself as a musical artist in terms of unique sound and really bringing your own sound to the table?
I think that comes with time.
Time.
Because when we all start, we're influenced by whoever our influences are, right?
Yeah.
We all pick up guitar because either we want to be like Paul McCartney or John Lennon or Jimmy Page or whoever, right? And then you kind of emulate that, right? And then you may start listening to other things, and and then that comes into this thing, and then it's like a big pot.
Right.
All these things go into this pot that you take in from wherever, musical experiences, life experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Movies can influence you musically.
Yes.
If you're writing lyrics or, a theme. And then I think you just wake up one day and, at a point, I think maybe for me, it was about probably around Bust a Nut, right? Which was 1995.
Right.
10 years after we put out our first record, that I actually just thought, well, maybe this is my own style now, what I'm doing. I mean, I certainly have it now.
For sure.
I know when I play and I write songs or whatever, today it's like, that's Brian Wheat. If he's doing Soul Motor or if he's doing Tesla or whatever. but that doesn't have, I think it takes a long time to develop. I mean, look at Paul McCartney, if you will. Okay. When he started, he was emulating Elvis and Little Richard and Buddy Holly on those early Beatle records.
Right.
And then you get to, he advanced so quickly though, but you see this progression where that beginning Paul McCartney that did I Saw Her Standing There and I Want to Hold Your Hand and that stuff, which he was emulating the guys he grew up on, right?
Mm-hmm.
When he got to Eleanor Rigby, he wasn't emulating anybody.
No.
Right? He was but he was taking from the classical reign because, his father listened to show bands and classical and all that stuff. So he still was drawing on these early influences when he was young. But then he turned into Paul McCartney, right?
Yeah.
Really evolved into this. And John Lennon, all the Beatles for that matter. So like I said, I think it took me about 10 years of making, from 85 to 95. Well, maybe it was 8 years because that was 93.
Mm-hmm. Give or take.
Yeah, give or take. That, of crafting my craft and doing things. And the more songs I wrote, the better they would get. There were still shitty ones, but the ones that were good were starting to get better and better.
For sure.
And I still write shitty songs. It's still, for every great one, I'll write 5 shitty ones. Or I won't call them great. I'll let someone else say great. But for the good one, there's 5 shitty ones.
Right.
And that's how you get to the good one, is by writing the 5 shitty ones.
And a lot of people don't want to do that, and they want to cut corners. But there's not really a way to cut corners, is there?
Well, it's like, look, if you're going to go to the gym and you're going to work out, there's no cutting corners.
Yeah.
Writing songs is like going to the gym. Michael Barbiero said that to me. Our first producer, he was like, writing songs like going to the gym. The more you work out, the better in shape you get.
Mm.
So
that makes so much sense.
Yeah. So that was, that's my answer. I think it takes a while. And you don't even realize it till one day you just kind of look back at your body of work and you go, oh, that's where I started to, develop my own style. And like with my bass playing, I'm not very precious about my bass playing. I don't consider myself a great bassist by any means. I think there are guys who play the bass and then there are bass players. I'm just a guy that plays the bass. But I do think I have a style now, right?
Oh yeah.
That I go, okay, that's me. But
undeniably,
it's made up of all these things I learned, from McCartney and James Jamerson, and John Deacon, and Tom Peterson from Cheap Trick, and Cliff Williams from AC/DC. Those are the guys for me. They were really focused guys.
Yeah. So
if like I'm not a Geddy Lee's a friend of mine, but I'm not a Geddy Lee type bass player or a Billy Sheehan or Les Claypool. I'm more of a fundamental, like a Cliff Williams.
Straight to the point, like the book.
Yeah, exactly. When you have 2 guitar players like I do in Tesla, and a drummer who plays so freely.
Right.
Someone's got to hold that thing all down. And that's my role as a bass player. But I've learned how to step outside of that and now know when to bob and weave, like Muhammad Ali, and come in and out and stuff. But that took some time, that took time of just experience and trying things. And so I got to ask you a question.
Yeah.
Were you named after Cassius Clay?
Absolutely.
Okay. Why didn't they name you Muhammad?
I know. That's the part I always try to put together. I love him though. I love watching his fights.
I've never seen anyone named Cassius besides Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, me either. And a lot of people call me Cassius, and I'm like, do you not remember the great, boxer?
They call you Cassius. Well, in the Roman Empire there was Cassius.
Right. That's the thing. So
So,
maybe they mix it up.
well, Cassius was first,
Right. Right.
but it's Cassius. And when I saw your name, I thought, I wonder if he's named after Cassius Clay.
Yeah. My dad, he loves boxing for sure. Tyson and Ali are my favorite guys for sure.
Yeah, Ali, he was such a beautiful man.
Yeah.
And he misunderstood a lot of times, I think.
Yeah.
Every night when I get into bed, because I'll be in my studio mixing or whatever, and then I'll go to bed, my mind still like won't turn off. And
Right.
you get like these Facebook channels and all this stuff. And I belong to a couple of these Muhammad Ali ones, and I always watch all his like interviews with Howard Cosell. I love those. Those were so good.
So many great ideas.
And he was really a beautiful human being.
Yeah.
And the greatest boxer. He was the Beatles of boxing.
Mm-hmm.
He was like Tom Brady's like Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
And that's what I was saying yesterday. People were slagging Brady while the game was going on, and in the beginning, even the announcers were like, they were rooting against him. Right?
Yeah. It was weird.
They were. It was so obvious. And I just wrote on there, everyone, please remember Ali Foreman. When everyone thought Foreman was going to kill Ali, and Ali was older, and Ali came out and whipped the shit out of Foreman, right? He'd been written off, like he was through, he was done, it was over for Ali. And that's kind of how I felt about Tom Brady. So I like those kind of underdog characters.
Underdog. Yeah. No, it's so cool.
Yeah, and I think that Tesla's kind of been an underdog band in a lot of sense, that we never were as big as Guns or Metallica or Leopard or Motley or whatever. We were kind of always that band that would sell 1 million records and no one really spoke about it. So I'm always for the underdog.
Yeah, and I think, the people who root for that, they have such a passion and connection, and I think that, that million could be converted to the passion of 10 million because there's such a closeness to it. So I think it's well worth it, and, obviously it's worked out fantastic, so.
Yeah. Well, hey, I enjoyed your interview, man. It's nice to meet you. You're up in Canada?
Yes, nice to meet you too, Brian. Thank you again.
Where are you? In Vancouver?
Edmonton.
Edmonton.
Yeah.
I have a few Edmonton Oiler hockey jerseys.
Oh, nice. You like the great one?
He's the greatest, isn't he?
Greatest.
right there with Ali and Ruth and Richard Petty and Tom Brady. There's Gretzky.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
He's the man.
Yeah, I've got a couple of Gretzky's jerseys too. But I don't really follow hockey. I just like hockey jerseys.
Yeah, they're cool to hang on in a nice frame or something.
I wear them all the time, especially in the winter.
Oh yeah, nice.
Or if
and
I
warm.
gain weight, I wear them. To hide my fat.
One of the two.
So you'll know when I'm heavier because you'll see me in a hockey jersey.
We got
because my weight goes up
shirt.
And down, and I talk about that in the book. It just goes up and down.
Yeah.
So because of this medication, So, but anyways, hey, Mrs. Spanky.
Spanky. Hey.
Hey, Spanky boy.
What
Rubber
a cutie.
Bro, you were good, son.
How
He's
old?
My 9-year-old Jack Russell.
9 years
Come here,
old.
Falfy. Falfy, come on, Falfy, come on. And this is Alfalfa. This is my 3-year-old.
Hey. Oh my gosh, they're gorgeous.
Hi, Falfy boy.
I wish I had my animals.
Downstairs.
I got a couple cats. I got a black lab. Gorgeous. And there you have it. My exclusive interview with Brian Wheat of Tesla. I want to thank Brian for coming on the show. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. If you like the conversation you just watched, please hit that subscribe button here on YouTube. As I mentioned off the introduction, I'm trying to build my viewership base up in terms of subscribers. And for my Cassius Morris Clips page, which is the second channel, I'm almost at 1,000 subscribers where I can hit the monetization mark. I'm at about 800. So please subscribe on that channel so I can start monetizing and start making some money off the YouTube stuff. I would greatly appreciate it. Also follow me on social media at Cassius Morris and at Cassius Show. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Thanks so much for tuning into the podcast. Until next time, this is Cassius Morris saying, rock on.